Let me recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hern, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. It's been a long day, I'm sure, probably a long week. But just for the record, you and I have never met before. Didn't serve with you, so I don't know you at all. So my line of questioning is not about you personally. It's really about performance. I spent 35 years in business prior to coming here 3.5 years ago, and I don't have time to deal in the personalities. It's really about performance. And, you know, you work for the president, and the president has very low ratings right now because the majority of America is concerned about directionally where we're going in the country. And the one thing you are responsible for in the moment is running HHS, a very large organization, some would argue the largest, and there's a lot of responsibilities come with that. As I also started out my questioning with Mr. Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas, 2 weeks ago when he came to talk to the Border Caucus, this is not personality, this is about performance. And what we're seeing now for a year and a half is, you know, somewhere north of 2 million people have crossed the southern border, and the CDC's only Band-Aid for that, or a Band-Aid for the southern border, has been Title 42. Much has been in the news about that recently. And yet HHS has directed the administration to end Title 42. But at the same time, recommending that Congress authorize more COVID relief funding. And now that's an $82 billion in his budget, and continuing to recommend masks. And while you say cruise ships are different than schools, Title 42 implementation jurisdiction is based on the same public health emergency. This week, many of us in Congress have been getting hospitals and service providers, medical providers coming by. And I've heard from a number of my constituents this week about that mask mandate in hospitals. Numbers are low, but masks are still mandated. Staff quitting, patients struggling, and visitors becoming hostile. But when hospitals even question CMS guidance, they're at their risk of being shut down. Now, I haven't gone and checked these, but it's time and time again, so this had to be a coordinated effort if it wasn't factual. So the pandemic remains a concern that you ask Congress for even more money and refuse to end the controversial policies like mask mandates. Yet, it's no longer a concern at the southern border. Something's not adding up here. Millions of Americans agree with me, which is a large factor in your boss's low approval ratings. Here are some of the things I think we can agree on. First, we need to drive down health care costs. Second, all can agree as Americans that the individual are better stewards of their own money than the federal government. And lastly, there's nothing more important than America's health. We share the same goals, making health care affordable. And my concern is there's really nothing in the budget that truly addresses the underlying cost of care, as you've heard from both sides of the aisle today. And in spite of the promises of the ACA, which you voted for 12 years ago, and its support expanding, doubling down, and were so instrumental in California in keeping it the law, over the last 10 years, per person spending on health care increased by 28.7%, premiums jumped 143%. Between 2013 and 2019, and deductibles increased by an average of 35% over the same span. Mr. Secretary, again, over 2 million people have crossed the southern border, and there have been over 220,000 apprehensions just this past month, a new record. Drug trafficking, highest death rate now in America is caused by fentanyl coming across the southern border. Is there a public emergency or not? Health emergency?
Congressman, I have declared that the country is still in a state of a public health emergency, which please don't conflate that with what Title 42 is about. That's the problem. The way that people are confusing the issues is making it very difficult for Americans to understand what is going on. But I hope that what we can do is agree that we wouldn't use the ACA or we wouldn't use Medicare to deal with a migration challenge at the border. We should not use Title 42, which is a health care law, to deal with migration challenges at the border.
Well, even your own border agents are concerned that when this is removed, that they'll be completely overran. So while the administration, your office, Mayorkas, don't believe this is a problem, certainly your border agents are in charge of protecting the sovereignty of this nation, believe it's a real problem and have said so time and time again.